Welcome to our Shepherd's Chapel Bible Study. It's so great that you could join us once again. Today we're in chapter 7 of Proverbs. And what have we been dealing with for the last couple weeks, and really what we're going to be dealing with today? What's the number one word? It starts with an L. Lust. Now, quite frankly, we've been talking about fleshly lust. We got into pornography last week. And you say, well, how is that in our Father's Word? Because it comes from a person's heart. So it's in a person's heart and what they see and what they allow to go into their heart and into their mind. Now, we're not only going to be dealing with the fleshly lust today, we're going to be dealing with the worldly lust today. You say, well, how is that different? Because it encompasses all things of the world. You have a question? No. Okay. Well, without further ado, let's continue. Chapter 7, verse 1, with wisdom from our Heavenly Father, and it reads. And again, it says son here, but this is genderless. This is for all peoples. My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Notice last week it said commandment, but we're talking about commandments. Now, what are we talking about here? Some people say, well, this is Solomon talking to his son. But this is your Father talking to you about all good things of His Word, which basically would be all good things. But it's, why is He talking to this in this vernacular? What is He trying to get through to us? He's basically trying to teach us how to survive on this planet without getting into trouble. That's what He's trying to do. Because, let's face it, who's the prince of this world? Satan. Now, with that mindset, we realize that, hey, this world is the way it is, and we need to learn how to deal with it. I don't care how good you want to be, you're going to be cast into a situation, if not on almost a daily basis, of pulling yourself away from God, if you allow it. So we have got to have that ammunition, if you will, which is the Word, which is truth, which is understanding, to go to lean on, to be able to pull us out of certain situations. And that's what Proverbs is doing for us. It's giving us an understanding of how we need to behave. So that when it talks about commandments, it's talking to you about basically God's Word, His laws, His reasoning, and why He has given us the things that He's given us to do. Verse 2 says, keep my commandments and live. That means live well. And my law, that's why we know it's from the Father, and my law as the apple of thine eye. Now the way he uses this, what is the apple of thine eye?
The pupil.
The pupil. Now why is he using this? He's using it is because what does everyone want? I don't care who you are, providing you can see, but what does everyone do when there's something coming right at your eye? That's right, you blink, you flinch, whatever. Why? Because instinctively you want to protect that eye. You might not even be thinking of anything coming at you, but when something all of a sudden comes at your eye, you flinch, you blink, you do whatever you can to protect that eye. Well, this is what your Father wants you to do with His law. He wants you to protect it in your heart. In other words, take His law, take His commandments, and protect it with yourself. In other words, don't abuse it. Don't try to manipulate it. Learn it, study it, and do it. And protect it in your life. That's what he's talking about. It says in verse 3, bind them upon thy fingers. What does that fingers mean? What your hands do. What your hands do. Write them upon the table of thine heart. What is heart also a translation of? Your mind. What does it mean to write it upon your mind? That means is that you remember it. It's important to you. You just don't read over something. You accept what is there, and you try very earnestly to live by it. Verse 4, say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman or close friend. How do you get wisdom and how do you get understanding? From our Father's Word. Can you get wisdom and understanding in the world? In a certain way you can, but the thing is, what do you learn? You learn things that are going to be done away with when you're dealing with the world. When you're learning things by our Father's His Word and His laws, you're learning things that will never be done away with. So that's important. Verse 5. Why do you do this? That they may keep thee from the strange woman. Now I know this sounds gender, but what are we talking about?
The whore of Babylon, how about?
Could be the whore of Babylon. Basically, when you're dealing with the world, that's exactly what you're talking about. From the stranger, now we're going masculine, which flattereth with her words, goes back to female. So in other words, this is really genderless, but it's talking about here someone that you're dealing with that is going to try to manipulate you with words. We don't know anybody or anything that does that, do we? I mean, in this world. Even what we would call friends at times. People who try to flatter you, who try to give you knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of their ways. So, it says, flattereth with her words. Verse 6. For at the window of my house. Now he's going to give you an example here of what he sees. For at the window of my house I looked through my casement, 7, and beheld among the simple ones, in other words, the common folk, I discerned among the youths. I looked at these young people and I watched something happening. A young man void of understanding. In other words, he's looking at someone now who basically just doesn't understand the reality of life. So, I'm going to read you now about 8 to 12 verses in a row because it's all the same story. Listen. Verse 8. This is what he saw. Passing through the street near her corner, and he, this man, this young man, he went the way to her house. Presents a story for us. 9. In the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark of night. In other words, this is done primarily in secret. 10. And behold, there met him a woman with the attire of an harlot and subtle of heart. Now it sounds like he's basically gone to a whore's house. But let's put reality. We're dealing with a woman of flattery, we'll call her at this point. But also we're dealing with a young man who went to her house. Okay? So basically at this point, if they do anything, is it wrong? Well, so far, nothing said that's wrong. A young guy went to a girl's house. But listen, 11. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. Basically, she whores around. Okay? So now the picture broadens a little bit. Now, verse 12. Is she without? Now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner. Basically, he's saying it in a nice way, she's a big old fat whore. You know, she runs out and she just stands on the street corner and she waits for guys. 13. So she caught him and kissed him, and with an impudent face, a brazen face, said unto him, verse 14, I have peace offerings with me. This day have I paid my vows. Now what does this sound like, spiritually speaking? It sounds like a virtuous woman. A woman who basically did what she was supposed to do that day, the right thing to do. She paid her vows. You know, she gave peace offerings in the tabernacle.
Is that what they call that now?
Well, I'm just saying this is what she's saying to this young man.
Yeah.
So she's presenting herself not as an harlot.
No.
She's presenting herself as a virtuous woman. Now, why is he giving this picture for us, because this is how the world works.
The world's
okay?
full of con men
Exactly.
and women.
Exactly. This is genderless, really.
Yeah.
But listen, verse 15. Therefore, came I forth to meet thee. In other words, he's saying, this is why I went to meet her.
Mm-hmm.
No, he meant to meet her before he ever knew this about her, right? So in other words, what is he doing here? He's lying to himself.
He's conning himself.
He's lying to himself. Now, keep in mind the main subject, lust.
Mm-hmm.
Lust. Therefore came I forth to meet thee diligently, to seek thy face, and I have found thee, a virtuous woman. 16. She says, I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry, with carved works, with fine linen of Egypt. Now she's presenting herself as a woman of means now. I mean, let's face it, not too many people back then would have all these things. But it's not her stuff, we'll find out. Listen, 17. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, verse 18. Let us take our fill of love until the morning. Well, why only till the morning? You know, let's
That's when
take
the
it.
neighbors get up.
You know, why? Till the morning. Let us, what is it, solace ourselves with loves. Let us become one and together throughout the night. Listen.
Go in the morning.
But here's the catch. Here's the hook. 19. For the goodman, what's the goodman? The goodman of the house, the owner of the house.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. There's a problem here.
Yeah.
It ain't her stuff. It's his stuff. Right? For the goodman is not at home. He has gone a long journey. 20. He hath taken a bag of money with him and will come home at the day appointed. He's not coming back until such and such day. So you ain't got no problem. You ain't got no problem. We'll be here all night. Now, she's telling this boy, basically, she says one thing and is showing another. In other words, the longer she talks, and again, this is genderless, but the longer she talks, the more you can realize, hey, I'm dealing with a liar here. But he's a liar to begin with, because he's lying to himself, making excuses why to go to her. Right? 21. With her much fair speech, she caused him to yield. No, he was ready for it. He was ready for it before he ever went. With the flattering of her lips, she forced him. Okay? Now, what do you think of this story?
Sounds typical.
Well, what do you mean by that?
I hear it all the time.
You
know, you don't understand. I had to. It just,
Didn't have a choice.
I was forced. I had to do this.
Harley?
Do you think on the spiritual level that the owner of the house could be like Christ in your heart? Kind of, he's not here at the moment, his eyes don't see, and they think, trying to fool God when you can't.
Good insight. Yes. The fact of the matter is that people, in general, flesh people, if they're going to do something wrong,
They gotta have an excuse.
they have an excuse. And if they don't, they make it up. They just make it up. And they do it anyways. In other words, basically, what is this telling you? Is that when you're following the flesh, hear my words, when you're following the flesh will do what the flesh wants to do. Now, what happens afterward if you do something wrong? You feel guilty. Being a Christian, I'm talking about. You feel guilty. Why? Because you did something you're not supposed to, even if you made yourself an excuse for it. There's something in the back of your mind that is causing you maybe not to sleep well, not to eat well, not to think well, just to be in a bad state of affairs, grumpy, whatever the case may be. It manifests itself in your life because you're doing something that you know that you shouldn't be doing, and until you confront it in your life, face it, because you might as well, because it's before God anyways. So either you're going to have to face it now, or you're going to have to face it later. But I can guarantee you 100%, if you're doing something wrong, you are going to have to face it someday. So what our Father is trying to teach us here, why not face it now? Why not deal with it now? Look, okay, you made a mistake, or mistake after mistake after mistake. And you might be in a position to say, well, I'm just too far into it, I'm too deep, or whatever the case may be. What are you really saying? That your problem is more bigger than God. That's what you're really saying. That's the bottom line. That's where the rubber meets the road. My problem is bigger than God. Now, if you come to a point of realizing that your problem is this big before God, this big to you, yes. Don't know how to get out of it. True. But with God, with Him leading you, and you fully trusting in Him, I mean fully trusting in Him, He will teach you how to get out of a problem. Lead you, guide you, direct you out of a situation. But the problem is a trust issue. You said, oh, I trust God completely. If you trusted God completely and you know what something that you're doing is wrong, that you would learn through Him how to get out of it. You say, well, I've done that. I've done that, but I've fallen back. Guess what you're talking about? You're walking in the world. You're walking in the flesh. You're dealing with it every day. But your God is not going to forsake you. You can go back to Him 1,000 times if that's what it takes. But the key ingredient is to go back to Him. Keep going back to Him. Keep going back to Him. Now, I don't know all your situations, but knowing you as I know you, we've all dealt with certain situations in our past that we had to learn how to overcome. And with God, we were able to overcome it. Doesn't mean we're perfect now by any means, but we know the formula. And that's what this is about. It's a formula. He's telling you, look, this isn't anything new. This ain't nothing new. So let's continue. Verse 22. He goeth after her straightway as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks. In other words, head on. He knows it's wrong. He's lied to himself. He's lied to God. He's lied to this woman. She's lied to him. They're both going at it headlong. 23. Till a dart strike through his liver. What does the liver do?
Filters your blood. Well.
And what is And what is the blood of the body? It's your life force.
Mm-hmm. Keeps it clean.
So as a dart strikes your liver, what is that basically saying?
You're dead.
He basically did this until there's a problem. The problem is he realizes what he's doing is going to cause him to die.
Yeah.
Placing that thought of cleaning again there. He probably did it to a point to where, he can't clean. It can't be.
He's full of filth.
Yeah, it cannot be clean no more.
Well, I understand that philosophy, but with God, you can always be cleansed.
Yeah.
But he came to a realization here. Or did he? Listen. Till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteth to the snare, and knoweth not that it is for his life. Now, excuse me, I got a sinus problem or something. We covered this last week in verse 6, or chapter 6, verse 32, I think it was, of idolatry. Here's how our Father, I want to read this again. Proverbs 6, verse 32 says, But whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. Well, duh. But listen, this is how our Father looks at it. He that doeth it destroyeth his own soul. So, we can look at lust, and that's what we're going to primarily be into, because right now we're virtually talking about a man versus a woman in an adulterous affair. But this, he's going to expound to us in a little bit, is that we're talking about not only a lust for the flesh, but we're also talking about the lust of the world. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But how important is this? Your Father is saying, look, if you don't learn this, you're going to die in your sins.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to die in your sins. Now, a lot of people that have the know say, well, we got the millennium. What, you're going to wait and chance to the millennium?
Yeah.
Well, why go through life the rest of the time that you have in the flesh playing Russian roulette? Because that's what you're doing.
Buy me another day.
Huh?
Buy me another day.
That's what a lot of people think.
I know.
And they keep... Let me tell you something. Once you start making excuses to yourself, because basically you're trying to make it to God, but once you start making excuses, it becomes easier to make excuses. The initial time might be a certain guilt-ridden kind of thing. But then the longer you continue to do things against God, the easier it gets. You know, it's just like our study. No, we come and we gather and we study and we honor Him, we worship Him in His Word. We ask Him to lead, guide, and direct us, and He does. But for whatever reason, life in general takes us away from that. At first, it's just an innocent thing. It's just something that needs to be done. And well, we decide to get it done. But we find out afterwards that it becomes easier and easier not to study, not to pray, not to worship. And it extends itself. Why? Why does it become easier? Because the world is easier. The world makes it easy. Because there's so many things to do in life. Why do you think God, well, we know why, but I'm going to ask you, why did God create the Sabbath? For Himself? Who did He create the Sabbath for?
us,
Why?
rest in Him.
Why is that important? You're 100% correct, but why is that important?
You've got to take a break from the world at least once a week.
Well, here's the key. The Sabbath, is it at the beginning or the end of the week?
Well, technically at the end.
It is.
After 6 days of working.
Because God worked for 6 days.
Yeah. That was
And
His
then He
day.
rested.
Yeah.
And He used that as our formula. In other words, we need a break.
Mm-hmm.
We need a break from doing stuff. Now, God knows we need to work. But again, I don't want to get too far into the Sabbath because we've talked about this and we've studied it and we know it. But the point is that we need to rest in Him. So what He's telling us, look, when we learn something, when we're giving something through His Word, we need to rest in that Word and take it with us throughout the week, not just on Sabbath. And He says, in verse 24, "Hearken unto me now, therefore, O ye children, and attend to the words of my mouth." You listen and you listen up. 25. "Let not thine heart decline to her ways. Go not astray in her paths." Now He's using the story that He gave us about a young boy and a woman. He says, take it up in your heart, in your mind, don't go astray. For, verse 26, she hath cast down many wounded. In other words, she's done this not just with you. She's done this all along with many people. Yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Again, this is a metaphor. This is male or female. 27, her house is the way to hell. Going down to the chambers of death. Now, that's the end of this chapter, but I don't want to end here today because I want to take this to a deeper level. First off, the word lust. Those of you that want to continue study 1 John chapter 2, go there. I'm going to go there in just a moment. Just read a couple verses. 1 John chapter 2. But lust, the word lust is written hamad. And it means to desire, to be desirable. It also means to delight greatly. And we're not dealing with lust just of the flesh. As we're going to see in 1 John chapter 2, we're also dealing in lust of material things. So, in 1 John, it's past Philemon, past Hebrews, 2 Peter, 1st, 2nd Peter, then 1 John. Are we there? 1 John. All right, 1 John, chapter 2, verse 15. I just want to read a couple verses. What does he say? Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, now this is how important this is. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. You can't love the world, the things, lust after the things of this world, and say that you love God. Why? Because the world's temporary. It's not going to last forever. So, oh, yes, it is. It's just going to be transformed. The things of this world and all the stuff that we have in this room, all the stuff that you own, is going to be done away with. You're not going to have it in the kingdom. You're not going to want it in the kingdom, because you're going to have something so much better. Verse 16 says, for all that is in the world, the lust, now this is why I came here, the lust of the flesh, that's part of being in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes. Now he separates this. What would be the lust of the eyes? Material things. Not just male and female. We're talking about lusting after getting something that you delight in greatly. You know, that could be a motorcycle, that could be a car, that could be a house, that could be a vacation, that could be anything that you delight so much in that you'll put God on the back burner to do it. And won't think twice about it. And make excuses to do it. And not that there's anything wrong in doing things in the world, but the thing is, you don't lust after it. You do it or you don't do it. It's no big deal to you. I've said this many times. I used to go fishing every day. When Shane was just a hike, I had 2 small fishing boats, aluminum and a wood one. You know, I used to go fishing every day. Loved it. When I moved out here, when Donna and I first got together, we used to go fishing all the time. I don't even have a fishing pool now. Not that there's anything wrong with fishing. No, I don't have a fishing pool.
Mm-hmm.
I do?
You found one in the closet, remember?
I found one in the closet.
Right.
I still haven't used it.
Years ago.
I'll hang on to it. I might need it someday. Might have to fish the sewer lines.
Just for dinner.
But the point being is, fix that rug, Rachel, please. Thank you. But the point is that I don't delight so much in that anymore. I delight, you know what I delight in? What we're doing right now. I could sleep an hour only the day before, but delight in doing this. Because it's important. And this is what our Father wants you to look at in His Word. But listen, 16, for all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. Now, how clear can he be? When you start delighting in all this stuff, you're delighting in the world. Not that there's anything wrong in getting it and acquiring it, but you don't lust after it. In other words, it's all the most important thing in your life. Because what you're doing is putting God on the back burner. And last verse, verse 17, and the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. Baby, remember we were having this discussion that we're talking about when we come to the kingdom. And does lust end? We were debating. Well, we didn't have this verse before us at the time, and it didn't come to us at that time. And we were having a debate. Well, of course it does. But then we say, well, wait a minute now. What about the third of God's kingdom joining Satan in the kingdom? Didn't they have to lust after Satan? So how could lust be have done away with if they were in spiritual bodies and they lusted?
Wasn't that the first age?
Yes.
First 7, 8?
But see, we're reverting back to a spiritual being.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we were then.
Yeah.
So when did that lust first occur? Well, it had to occur there.
Right.
But our question was, once we go back during the millennium, because remember, it's only up until the end of the millennial period, when Satan is loosed for that short season, there's going to be some people in spiritual bodies that will still be following Satan.
That's correct.
So they will be lusting for Satan. So technically, wouldn't there be lust in spiritual bodies?
Yes, but it
Not
won't
in this
be.
world.
Just not allowed into the kingdom.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, once the world is transformed, at the end of the millennial period is when there will be no more lust.
Right.
But up until that time, there will be.
Yeah, there's going to be a big fire.
How can you be tested if, it's not there?
Yeah. But what we're all shooting for, if you will, the golden ring, the light at the end of the tunnel is at the end of the millennial period.
Correct.
Hopefully, what we're shooting for is the beginning of the millennium. Why? Because those set-aside ones at the beginning of the millennium will never have to face death. In other words, we won the victory.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a lot of people at that point still hadn't won because they got 1,000 years to go to be taught. Well, isn't that what we want to do now, to be taught now? So, if that's our goal, we need to get rid of all worldly lust. We need to get rid of it. And if there's any of it in our lives, we need to learn how to get rid of it.
It's hard to do.
It is hard to do. Why? Because number one, you're in the flesh, and number two, you're in the world. But your Father has just told you, you're not in Him if you're in this. So quit conning yourself. We gotta face reality here, folks, and this is all of us. If we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing and we're making excuses to ourselves, you ain't conning God, you're only conning yourself.
That's why we're supposed to keep His Word in the forefront of our mind.
Yeah, but even keeping His Word at forefront in your mind, you can still make excuses of doing something wrong. We need to face the reality. If we're doing something that is wrong, we need to face it and get rid of it in our lives. With His help, of course. But we need to face it and be real with ourselves and be real with God, maybe for the very first time. Say, Lord, I've blown it. And don't just say, I've blown it and go about the rest of your day because you said I blew it. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to get rid of it. One last turn, I think. Where did I want to go? Got it marked here for a reason. I can't remember why. Oh, yeah. Proverbs chapter 1. Because this is something that we need to realize. Our Father wants to bring this home to us, to understand it. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 20 says this, Wisdom crieth without. She uttereth her voice in the streets. 21. She crieth in the chief place of concourse. That means in the streets. In the openings of the gates. That's where people make decisions. In the cities she uttereth her words, saying, verse 22, how long, ye simple ones? Simple ones meaning naive people. How long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? In the Hebrew, that word means foolishness. How long, simple ones, are you going to love being foolish? And the scorners delight in their scorning. And fools hate knowledge? Question. The question is, they hate knowledge. Being a fool, you hate being instructed. You know, you don't want to take the wisdom. You want to do what you want to do when you want to do it. That's what the flesh wants. That's where we started with this. That's what lust wants. Whether it be lust of the flesh or lust of material things. 23. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. This is what I want to do for you. I want you to know me. I want you to know me well. I want you to know all my words. I want you to have all the understanding. And I will pour it out to you. Because, verse 24, I have called, and ye refused. I have stretched out my hand, and no man regarded. But, verse 25, ye have set at naught, or nothing, all my counsel. You didn't listen to me. You didn't follow what I gave you. And would none of my reproof. You did not want what I gave you. 26, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. 27. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you, and it will. 28. Then shall they call upon me. When things get tough, when you're no longer on the mountain, when everything's not going good, what? Oh. When everything's not going good, then you start crying out to God, oh God, help me in my distress. Well, you've turned from Him all these months, all these weeks, all these days, all these years, doing things your own way, making up your own excuses. Now you're going to Him? You say, well, wait a minute now. He says, you can always call on me. Listen. But I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. There's a reason for that. Listen, 29. For that they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. In other words, you still got that mindset. You don't revere the Lord, and you still hate knowledge. I give you this knowledge, but you're not following it. 30. They would none of my counsel. They despised all my reproof. Therefore, 31, shall they eat of the fruit of their own way and be filled with their own devices. In other words, you make your bed, you're going to lie in it. Because that's the only way you're going to learn. 32, for the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. Doesn't matter how much stuff you got, it's going to kill you. But, hear this, we'll end here, 33, but whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet from fear of evil. Those that do what? Those that listen to God. So in other words, if you truly listen to Him, which means that you obey Him, and you follow His ways, and you trust in Him, you will be able to succeed forever. And you'll get rid of all this other stuff that you accumulated in the flesh, heart, and mind. That doesn't mean that you got to sell all your stuff and become a monk on the top of a monastery mountain. It's not what this means. It means the lust that you have in your heart, the stuff that you have in your heart and in your mind that's so important to you needs to not be so important to you anymore. What needs to be important to you first and foremost is your Father. And helping people where you can. That's why we're here. We help ourselves by helping others. But along the way, we've got to learn to get rid of the stuff in our hearts that's wrong. Got to get rid of it. Because your Father told you today, whether you heard it or not, He told you today, if you don't get rid of it, He is not in you. Those aren't my words. Those are His words. You don't like it, you take it up with Him. Because He's the one that said it. Well, I guess my time is over. To God be the glory.